President Trump signing an executive order earlier today. He reclassified marijuana as a less dangerous drug, a move that could ease regulation and boost research. But it comes as there are some House Republicans that demanded President Trump reverse his course after strongly considering a marijuana executive order. So for the very latest, let's go out to Fox News' Mark Meredith with a breakdown of this.
Hey, Mike, good to see you. Merry Christmas, of course. One of the big questions here is about what's next. So the president today signed an executive order which basically directs the attorney general to wrap up the law enforcement review of whether or not to reclassify marijuana. This was a process that started under the Biden administration. Health and Human Services looked at it, kicked it over to the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, which falls under law enforcement. So the Attorney General has basically been waiting to see what was going to happen. The president's executive order says, let's wrap this up and move Schedule 1 marijuana from a Schedule 1 drug to a Schedule 3. Schedule 1, of course, is the harshest of drugs that is out there. This will move it to a Schedule 3, which is the equivalent of Tylenol with codeine. So the idea here is that it will still be used for medicinal purposes. This doesn't legalize on a federal level recreational use of marijuana. But instead, it allows the federal government to work more with marijuana to see what practical implications there might be for Medicaid users. For the Medicare, I think actually I should say Medicare is going to look to see what they can do with this for elderly Americans that may have pain. There have, of course, been so many clinical research trials done when it comes to marijuana, but because of the designation, the federal government has had to be a little bit more careful about what studies it would support, things to that effect. Here, basically, would green light it to go to the same level, except Tylenol with codeine. But you also have to look at here, there is such a political component to this. There were a handful of House Republicans, Senate Republicans who were begging the president, please do not do this, and the president decided to go forward with this anyway. Maybe one particular reason the president even brought it up today was that he believes that the polling shows the majority of Americans want this to happen. Gallup had a poll that came out in November showing 60% of people believe marijuana should be used recreationally, legalized nationwide. We've seen so many states already go through with that. I mean, you think I was in Colorado back in 2012 when voters legalized it on a ballot initiative, and since then we have seen so many other states go in that same direction.
And Mark, marijuana has often been described by some as a gateway drug. Was that the reason that some of these House Republicans were urging the president to reconsider?
Mike, you're right. This is something that for decades back, I mean, Republicans have been pushing this issue. You think back to Nancy Reagan and the Just Say No campaign, that they believe this is a slippery slope. And you're right, a lot of Republicans believe that this is not the right message to send, especially when so many American kids right now are struggling in school, dealing with post-pandemic worlds, whether or not saying, okay, marijuana is safer, that's the case. And the president even brought this up in the Oval. He said, well, wait a second, I'm not saying that you should do this, but for those who may need it for medicinal purposes, this is what's necessary. And you bring up another great question here is, what about the people that all of us rely on every day, whether it's your airline pilot, your bus driver? What will this mean for them? Will they still be, have to have workplace restrictions on what kind of drugs they can or can't use? This opens up all sorts of new questions here, because if it's treated just like medicine and you get a prescription for it, could an employer say, no, well, you can't use it? And we just don't know. These are all things that have to get worked out here, Mike, in the next several weeks and months. And this EO is just that. It's an executive order. I would bet there is going to be a lawsuit challenging whether or not this change can happen. But this EO also only directs the Attorney General to move forward. It's not like the president himself is saying, all right, let's just make it Schedule 3.
Yeah, it'll be so interesting to see how it definitely trickles down to really all facets of life. Mark Meredith, thanks so much for joining us on Live Now from Fox. Merry Christmas to you and your family. We always appreciate the updates.
Thanks. Stay warm out there.